Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dennis Brown, and this is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, we are going to be doing another live Q&A. So if you are interested in becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, today we're going to focus in predominantly on how to become a freight broker startup, how to become a freight agent startup tips. And so ultimately, that's really what I want to focus in on today, but it's going to be a live Q&A format, but you have to hold your questions until I say go, because I'm streaming here on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so the comments and questions come pretty quick, but thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for being here. Again, we're going to do a live Q&A format. So that's how we're going to get started. And I want to just take a moment here to thank everybody from last week who joined the live and then afterwards went and wrote a review, a Freight Broker Bootcamp review about their experience and how much they valued it and how much they appreciated the course and how much they appreciated the lives. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that you guys did that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I want to welcome some people. So we're going to start out with some shout outs, then we're going to jump into the Q&A. So hold tight. Okay. So as always, Cynthia Moore from Maryland, welcome. Thank you so much. Corey, as always, from Billings, Montana. It's not unusual to see there's a core group of people that join these lives every week. I'd say there's, about 10 people that are really consistent every week. And then there's a bunch of people who catch it every other week. And then we have people that are brand new, and this might be their first time. If you're a first timer, make sure you mention that when you do, you enter the city and state you're logging in from, so I can give you a quick shout out. Again, I'm in the Buffalo, New York area. I'm in a little suburb called Clarence, been a lifelong resident here in Western New York. I've had a lot of students from New York and Western New York and Buffalo area. So where are you guys from? Hit me up in the comments with the city and state. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll give you a quick shout out. Ella Tatusa from San Jose, California. Rad Freight Brokerage from Mountain View, California. Henry from Cali. Scott from Lubbock, Texas. So we got a bunch of people from California. And then we've got Scott chiming in from Texas. He's here quite often. Thank you for joining me. Again, today we're going to, after the shout outs, we're going to focus in on Q&A. So I'm going to try to get them as many questions of your questions as I can in the time allotted. All right. So that's where we're at. I'd like to focus in on more, freight broker startup, freight broker agent challenges, issues, struggles, right? More in the startup realm, right? In and around that. But again, I'll do my best to try to answer any question that you have, based on my past experience. Again, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dennis Brown, been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. I'm very, very blessed, built 3 multi-million-dollar companies and 4 multi-million-dollar companies in 4 different industries. I'm sorry. Grew a freight brokerage and did over $200 million as a freight broker. And I've owned Freight Broker Bootcamp, which is my startup freight broker online training program. Had that program for over 15 years now and have trained over 10,000 students through that program, many of which have went on to build 6, 7, and even 8-figure businesses. So I'm very, very blessed. Thank you for being here. Manuel from Georgia, Danny from Fort Myers, Florida. All right, cool. So we got a bunch of people that are joining us live. I completely blanked out and forgot to send the email out about the live today. So, there may be a little bit smaller group here, but that's okay. You can catch it on replay. All right. If you are a replay person catching this on replay later, I always love to hear from the replay folks. Hit me up with hashtag replay in the comments. Love to hear from you. Okay. So, all right, let's jump in. We're going to have a fairly small group. Without further ado, what questions do you have about starting or growing a successful freight brokerage or starting or growing a successful freight agency? Hit me up in the comments. Again, there will probably be more questions than there is time. Okay. Maybe, maybe not. Again, I didn't send the email out to my list. So we're probably going to have a little bit smaller group. If you have an important question, hit me up in the comments and I'll do my absolute best to try to answer that question today. If I don't have the answer, because believe it or not, I don't know everything, I'll try to point you in the right direction or maybe even do some research after the fact and try to get back to you. So there we are. I'm going to grab a drink and you guys hit me up with questions. Now it's your turn. Okay. Jump in here. Let's talk about challenges that you're having with starting or growing a successful freight brokerage. Let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, here's a good question from O'Shea. What is the most common objection with cold calling? All right, so if you are a new freight broker or a new freight agent, and you're reaching out to shippers and prospects in your niche, whatever you're going after, you are going to get objections. Not everybody's going to tell you no or yes. The majority of people, the heavy majority of people, are going to tell you no in some format or another. So the objections are typically 4 or 5 common objections, right? We don't do business with brokers, which is probably more than half the time a lie. Okay. They just don't want to do business with you, and they know that you'll tuck your tail and run away. We're happy with our current provider. You'll hear that quite often. Your price is too high, right? Meaning your rates are too high. We only work with asset-based companies, right? So if you're a non-asset-based brokerage, and then probably the smokescreen objection you'll get quite often, which is send me some info. Okay. Which is really just an objection in disguise to get you off the phone. So those are probably 4 or 5 of the most common objections you'll get on cold calls. Handling those objections and understanding how to handle those objections are really, really important, because if somebody gives you an objection and you just sit there and stutter, you don't know what to say, well, then obviously that doesn't build a whole lot of confidence, and that call is probably going to end pretty abruptly. But if you are prepared for that objection and you know what to say, then you can try to recover from that objection. And then sometimes you're able to get past that objection and move on to the next phase of the sale. Because what a lot of shippers are looking for, they're looking for somebody who has confidence. They're looking for somebody who has experience. They're looking for somebody who believes in what they're doing and is really committed. Because if you're not committed in building your own business, you're definitely not going to be committed in helping them succeed at their business. Okay. So that's an example of maybe a few common objections you'll get while cold calling or prospecting in freight broker sales. Good question. Question from Henry, how to overcome the gatekeeper. Okay, so the gatekeeper is someone that is designed to keep you from getting to the decision maker or decision makers or influencers within the decision. So for example, say you're calling the shipping manager or the logistics manager from the Buy Beverage Company, okay? Just a hypothetical. A lot of times what will happen is when you call into the company, they will have someone who maybe answers the phone, and then they're going to ask why you're calling. They're going to ask who you're calling. They're going to ask the reason for your call. And their job is to kind of ferret out if you are a salesperson or if you are someone that person's really going to want to talk to. So that's kind of what we call the gatekeeper. Okay. So the gatekeeper is someone who has a key to the gate, and they only open it up if they let you pass. And so, the gatekeepers can be really powerful. It's a powerful position because it can stand in your way of getting in touch with your prospects. So some of the easiest ways to get past the gatekeeper are super simple. The number one way to get past the gatekeeper is to know your prospect's name. So rather than calling in to the bottled beverage company and asking for, hey, can I talk to the shipping manager? Can I talk to the warehouse manager? Can I talk to the logistics manager? You're not going to do that. You're going to do a little bit of research, and you're going to find out that logistics manager or shipping manager's name. And when you call in, you're going to say, hey, can I talk to Joe in shipping? Or not, you don't even have to say Joe Smith. Hey, can I talk to Joe in shipping? Okay. Because now that builds confidence in the gatekeeper that, number one, the prospect because you asked for them by name. So knowing their name is probably one of the easiest ways to get past the gatekeeper, believe it or not. Okay? Because they don't have time. The gatekeepers are very busy. You can imagine they're fielding a lot of calls. They're wearing multiple hats, and they got a lot going on. So they don't have time to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minute conversation with every person that calls in. So if you can ask for them casually, as if you know them, as if they're a friend, as if they're a client, as if you already have a relationship with them, that's the perfect way to, the easiest way to get past the gatekeeper. Beyond that, obviously, if you don't have their name or they ask additional questions, right? You're at that point, what you want to do is you want to be honest and you want to try to develop some rapport with that gatekeeper, something witty or funny. Try to, recruit and ask for some help. Hey, I was wondering if you could help me out. People like to help people. People like to help people that they like. So if they like you and you ask for a little bit of help and it doesn't cost them anything or take a lot of time, a lot of times they'll help. All right. So now if you can't get past that gatekeeper, here's what I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. So what you're going to do at that point is you're going to get transferred to another department, maybe sales or maybe customer service or accounting or something, another department within the organization. Okay. And so what you're going to do there, you're going to get transferred in. And at that point, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to recruit some help. You're going to try to gather some sales intelligence. So say, for example, I call the sales department because they'll talk to anybody. And I get on the phone with Joe in sales and I say, hey, Joe, you know what? They transferred me to the wrong department, but I was wondering if you could help me out. And he's going to be like, oh, sure. What do you need? Hey, listen, I'm trying to reach the logistics manager or shipping manager. And I really just need to confirm his name. I have here, it's X, and say somebody's name if that's the name you have down. Can you confirm that? Or who is the shipping manager these days? Right. So you're going to gather some sales intelligence. So he's going to say, no, the shipping manager is Mark. Okay, great. I'd love to send him an email. Do you have Mark's email? And then you're trying to get his email because you're trying to gather some information, right? And then you might even have a conversation with him and say, hey, listen, I'm in the logistics industry, right? We specialize in X, Y, and Z. And I don't want to give you the big, long pitch because I know you're a sales guy. But, I was looking at your products. I was looking at your facilities. I was looking at what's going on inside your business. And, I'm just curious. And you ask a question and you gather some additional intelligence. You want to sound intelligent. Asking good questions, believe it or not, makes you sound more intelligent than just puking on whatever your prospect is or whoever that person is. So those are some examples. And then from there, what you'd love to do is you'd love to try to get his extension and you'd love to try to get referred in or transferred in from that salesperson. So now you've kind of went around the gatekeeper, especially if you go to sales, because those guys, again, will talk to anybody. But that's just a little bit of a hack that you might be able to get around the gatekeeper. Again, it's not going to work 100% of the time, but it does work. So I hope that helps. Okay, Scott says, I'll start. I think I have everything set up for the exception of a load board subscription. When did you know you were ready to start contacting shippers? It's an interesting question, Scott. Let me just kind of relive it here. I was very aggressive. Because I knew, and I had been an entrepreneur before starting my freight brokerage. Okay. I started my freight brokerage in 2003. I started my first business in 1994. Okay. So I had, almost 20 years in there, right? Or I had almost a decade in there before I started my freight brokerage. So I knew the importance of generating cash flow and that how important it was to get your first few clients very early from a learning curve perspective, but also from a cash flow perspective. So I dove right in. I mean, once we got our authority and we got some of the tech set up, and we decided on a niche, we made a list of shippers, in the Northeast that were focused, the types of products that would go on a van. And we just started, smiling and dialing. And it was a high volume of sales calls. So it happened very early on. I remember January of 2004 is when we officially launched. I think we did 10 or 12 loads that first month. And then the next month we did maybe 20 some loads, and then it just compounded from there. Year one, we did like 1.2 million in sales. Year two, we did like 3.6 million. Year three, we did 6 and change, and then we did 12, and then we did 18, then we did 23, then we did like 30 something, then we did like 50, and it just continued to grow, right? So I hope that draws a little bit of a picture, but I think it's sooner than later. But one of the things you're going to want to finalize before you do that is your niche. And then obviously, if you don't have any sales experience, you're going to want to brush up on those skills a little bit. You know, I'm not talking about spending months, but I'm talking about making sure you have a compelling sales hook. You understand how to do an opening on a cold call. You understand some of the basics objections that you're going to run into, right? And then from there, you just got to really dig in. So I hope that helps. And if you got a follow-up, let me know. Okay, question. I work for a logistics company. I do cold calls, get emails, and when they want the quote, the company says we have to send our contract before we give a quote. I tell them I lose them. Okay. Yeah. Chastity. I think that's stupid. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I think trying to send a contract before you do a freight quote is just pure stupidity, because all you're doing is creating a lot of unnecessary friction. Okay. And friction is the enemy of sales. You want to make the buying process as painless as humanly possible. Plus, it's completely unnecessary to talk about a contract before you've agreed on rates. Why is that? The reason why is because if you can't agree on rates, then you're not going to get any business anyway, right? And I'm going to break some news to you that, you know, larger companies are going to have their own broker shipper agreement that you're going to sign. They're not going to sign yours. Okay. And a lot of smaller clients that I dealt with, we never had a contract at all. We just had a credit sheet, and they understood we were a broker. We had a credit app. We ran their credit. We understood who they were. They did their background on us. We provided them some basic due diligence, and we did business together. There wasn't even a contract. So I think that on your company's part is a major mistake, because it's creating an enormous amount of friction that is absolutely unnecessary. Now, might you get to the point where pricing has been agreed upon, and then later you have to negotiate some contractual terms or some accessorial charges or things of that nature? Sure. That's a high quality problem at that point. Okay. So that's my 2 cents. I hope it helps. Angel. Credit build and customer onboard. Okay, well, Angel, here, I'm going to give you a credit building resource that's free. At least it's free for now. Let me just see where it is here. Hold on. I'm going to provide a link here. 1 second. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, cool. So if you are struggling as a new broker with building your credit, or you're trying to understand how to build your credit quickly so that more carriers will do business with you, go to www.freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit. That is a free credit building course that my friend Tom from Operify put together. It's a very good course. It's 100% free. Normally he charges $250 for it, but because you're a part of my community, you pay $0. You can sign up for that course online. It'll take you 20 seconds and you'll get access to the Freight Broker credit building course. All right. That's number one. Now, if you are in need of factoring as a new startup freight broker, then you can just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/cash flow, fill out the form, and somebody from Tom's team will reach out to you and help you to understand and navigate freight broker startup factoring and alternative financing, right? Which is one of the reasons why you don't need a ton of money to start as a freight broker, right? Is called factoring. And Tom's company, Operify, specializes in startups, right? Startup factoring. So I hope that helps. Now, as far as onboarding a customer, After you've agreed on rates, right, you're going to want to run credit on them. You're going to want to provide them some basic due diligence, like a shipper setup pack with some of the basic information. And then when you onboard them, right, the onboarding, typically the biggest part of the onboarding is going to be two things after you've done all that. One is you're going to get their load and you're going to move the load. So that's the most important element of onboarding a new client. Most new clients, when they come on, they usually have a load within several days. So you're going to need to make sure that that load picks up and delivers on time with no issues, right? The second part of that is more the accounting side of it, right? So what we used to do is after a new client would come on board, once we had that first bill that was going to go out to them, we would have someone in our accounting department reach out to them and make sure that we knew exactly what their billing requirements were. We knew exactly who the contacts were, and we started developing a relationship there, right? So those are a couple of things you do for onboarding. It's really not that complicated. You're going to answer whatever the specific questions that shipper has. Sometimes there's going to be a broker shipper agreement. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's their agreement. Sometimes it's your agreement. So there's really not that much to the onboarding piece. But the most important part of that is obviously making sure that that first load picks up and delivers on time in good condition with no problems. And then I strongly suggest you have the billing people connect on the back end to ensure that there's no billing issues, because that can cause, number one, cash flow slowdown. It can cause cash flow issues, but number two, it can cause a lot of strain, not only in your business, but also on their business. Okay. Trying to sort out, because some companies have different billing requirements. Okay. So hope that helps. That's just a couple of tips. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm just looking for a new question. Okay, question from Danny. Once you have your first few shippers, what do you do differently to scale up and go from just getting by running a real book? Okay, so you're asking about after you get your first few clients and you start moving loads, how do you scale that up? Okay, well, number one, if you got your first few customers, you're going to do more of that. You're going to continue to prospect. Because if you stop prospecting, naturally through attrition, you're going to start losing business over time. So you're not going to stop prospecting. Okay. Now you might go from spending 90% of your time prospecting down to 50% of your time prospecting, because you've got to fulfill the orders and requirements and obligations you have to your other customers, your newer customers. I think what you're really asking is, how do you do customer development so that you can go from doing a small amount of business with a customer to doing a large amount of business with a customer, right? So customer development is something where obviously when you start out with a new vendor, you typically start out, with new client, you start out pretty small, and then your goal is to expand that business month over month, year over year. Some companies are going to happen faster than others. The most important part of that equation is the first load. If you move that first load, you do everything you said you were going to do, and you pick up and deliver on time with no issues, what's going to happen is that's going to build an enormous amount of confidence, because at that point, prior to that, they're not quite sure what they're hoping that everything's going to go according to Hoyle, but they don't know, right? Because they don't know you that well. And so after that first load, a lot of times, sometimes the floodgates will just open up and they'll start giving you a significant amount of freight, depending upon the person. Other times they'll kind of slow play it a little bit. So what you're doing is you're developing relationships with not only the person, your main contact, but you're also trying to develop relationships with other people within the organization, within that actual location, right? Then you can also start developing relationships with other locations that they may have, right? So maybe you're operating with a location out of Buffalo. So maybe you're now going to talk to a location out of Pittsburgh or out of Boston or out of Newark, right? So because you're already set up with the company and you're already moving freight, sometimes you can rapidly scale up by following up with other, developing relationships with other locations. So those are a few ways that you can scale up from doing, having a brand new shipper where you're running 1 or 2 loads a week or 1 or 2 loads a month, into growing that into, 1 or 2 loads a day, or maybe 10 or 20 loads a month. Okay. So I hope that helps. Those are just a few tips. Good question, Danny. Hey, Dennis, I'm from Chicago. Could you please speak from the perspective of a shipper? What do shippers usually feel when we cold call them? What do they really want to hear from us? Okay, great question. So I've never been a shipper, but I've had hundreds of clients that were shippers, and I've spoke to tens of thousands of companies throughout my career. Okay. So from a buyer's perspective versus a seller's perspective, what do buyers, here's what buyers don't want to hear. They don't want to hear generic cold call scripts, particularly the 3 or 4 I'm going to mention to you now. I'm going to give you like the short elevator version of them. Hey, my name's Dennis. I'm a freight broker. Hey, wonder if we could save you some money and quote on your freight. Okay. Big mistake. Number one, they've heard it too many times. Number two, you've now just painted yourself in the corner of having to be the cheapest, or you don't get the business. Second one. Hey, my name's Dennis. I'm a freight broker. We have trucks in your area pretty regular. I was wondering if we could quote on some of your lanes or some facsimile of that. They've heard it hundreds of times. Okay. It's once they've heard that hundreds of times, what happens is it starts to trigger a negative response. Once they kind of hear the cadence and they hear the words and they hear the tone, all of a sudden in the first 5 or 10 seconds of the call, you're going to start getting objections. They're going to give you objections like, we don't do business with brokers, even though they're doing business with brokers. Or, we're happy with our current provider. We're not interested, right? So if you use generic sales scripts, don't be surprised when you get a lot of friction very early, okay? So those are a couple of examples of what happens, what not to do, right? Don't use generic cold call scripts that you find online or maybe being taught by, some guy from the 80s who doesn't even sell anymore, okay? So that's one part. The next part is what shippers want to hear. Shippers don't want to talk to salespeople. They want to talk to experts. They want to talk to smart people. They want to talk to people that can provide real solutions to their problems. So the better you know who your prospect is, who the actual shipping manager is, the types of products that they ship, the company, the information about specific to the company, and information specific to the industry, and you're niching down, say you're in the bottled beverage industry again, right? So you need to understand the bottled beverage industry. You need to understand the buy company. You need to understand the shipping manager within that company. And the more sales intelligence that you have, the more data that you have, the more educated you are, right? The more you can identify what the issues are within that organization, and you can do a 2-word phrase that I use all the time: be different. Okay. So you come up with a compelling sales hook. You come up with something that's different, an intro, a cold call script that's different than they've heard a million times before, because it's easy for you because you're more educated. I'm just going to give a plug here because that's a big part. That's one of the biggest reasons why I put together the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. So that program is my Freight Broker Sales Coaching program, where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head, and I teach you all my best freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, and most of all, my entire freight broker sales system that allowed me to do over $200 million as a freight broker. Now, that program is sold out right now, and we're not taking new enrollments, but get on the wait list because we will be opening enrollment pretty soon. So if you want to get on the wait list is 100% free. Just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. You can sign up, and you'll be the first to get notified when new spots open up. Maybe there'll be an opportunity for us to work together. I'd love that. We have over 1,000 clients that have went through that program. After everybody completes the program, we give them a quick survey, and we get a rating of a 9.2 out of 10 when it comes to this program. Okay. I would have been Happy with a 7, ecstatic with an 8, but we get a 9.2. Okay. So, yeah, if you need help with sales, if you're struggling with sales, if you don't have a background in sales, if you just feel like you're not quite ready to navigate the sales side, get on the wait list. Now, it's not a free program. It's not a cheap program, but I've got clients that have given me testimonials saying they've got a 50x return on their investment. Okay. So I hope that helps. Let me find another good question. Okay, question from Rad Freiburger. If you sign a shipper contract that does not address accessorial charges, do you work that information in the notes section of the quote or shipper rate confirmation, or do you address it in an email? Yeah, I would address it with the prospect. If accessorial charges are not defined in the agreement, then I would have a separate one-page accessorial surcharge sheet that we agreed to, that they would either sign off on, or I would send to them and they would reply and accept it. I want some sort of documentation that they understand the terms of the accessorials. And when we talk about accessorial charge, we're talking about how much do they pay per hour for detention? How much do they pay for a truck ordered not used? Things of that nature, right? How much are TARP charges? Things of that nature, right? Just basic accessorial charges as it relates to your specific niche. So you do want to agree on those up front. You don't want to create a lot of friction there, but ultimately the most important one that you're going to run into, the two you'll run into the most often, or the one you'll run into most often, is what do they pay for detention? Do they pay $50 an hour for detention in 15-minute increments? Do they pay $60 an hour for detention? What do they pay? You want to agree on that up front, because you will run into detention on the picks and the drops. It's just going to happen. It's just the nature of logistics. So good question. Betty, I'm not quite sure of your question. What should it cost to leave a factoring company? Well, typically you will have some sort of contract with a factoring company. There'll be a term on that. And there may or may not be some sort of termination fee. Okay. They're in it to make money as well, right? So I'm not quite sure. I know that, they're going to probably have a 1-year agreement. And if you terminate that agreement early, there may or may not be some sort of fees, depending upon the volume, depending upon the cost basis that they've incurred to get you set up. It's not free for them to set you up, right? They run credit on you. They run credit on all your prospects. They got to get a UCC filing. There's a lot to it that most people don't realize. They typically do not charge you up front for those things, but on the back end, if you terminate early, there might be. But I'm not sure what the fee is or should be, or what's involved with that. Yeah, Scott, I agree. Tom and the guys over at OperaFi are good people. Question from Angel. When you were paying carriers directly, would you pay in 30 days after the load is completed, or after you receive all the docs from the carrier, including their invoice? Great question. My terms were 30 days from the day we receive their invoice and the signed bill of lading. Not from the load date. It's from when they send me their invoice and the bill of lading. The reason being is because I can't invoice my shipper until I get that signed bill of lading that I can then pass through my bill to the shipper, because my terms with the shipper are going to be 30 days from when they receive it, not 30 days from the load. So you want to try to keep those in parallel so that you can try to even out the cash flow. Good question. Question from O'Shea. When prospecting new shippers, how do you keep the information so you can track who's already been contacted? I was thinking Excel. Also, do you recommend a specific CRM? Yeah, what you're going to do is the list of shippers that you generate. Say you got 500 bottled beverage companies you're going to call. A lot of times It depends. You can import those into your CRM and then you can start calling them from there, or you can have them in some sort of a Google Doc or spreadsheet. And then as you contact them and you have the conversations and they become prospects, you can enter them into the CRM. A lot of people just like to import them as leads. And then from there, they start the process of contacting them. The best way to do that is with a CRM. Okay. So let me share something with you really quick. I've got a tool for you. Highly recommend it. I've recommended it to many, many of my students. If you're looking for a freight broker specific CRM that's very cost effective and that will help you to stay organized when it comes to your sales efforts, like the question just wanted to address, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. If you go to that link, any special deals that he have, you'll get access to. And I've used it. I've seen it. I've had tons of people that from my community that have signed up for it, that love it. And so that's called Sales-CRM. If you just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM, he'll know you're from my community and he will absolutely take care of you. His name is Josh Lyles. I've had him on the podcast. We become friends and colleagues. He's doing a great job over at Sales Dash. So that's where you would go if you're looking specifically for a freight broker CRM that's very cost effective. Okay. Okay, question from Life in 4K. How long should I wait to call back the same shipper while doing my check calls? Not sure I understand the question. Check calls or cold calls? Please restate the question. Is this a prospect? Is this a customer? Is this a carrier? I'm not sure where you're going. Try to clarify the question for me, if you would. I'll try to help. Betty asked, do shippers ask for a compatibility statement? I've never had a shipper ask me for a compatibility statement. Jordan here from El Paso, tuned in late, sorry. I'm a truck driver and out here in California getting loaded, making the transition into freight brokerage. Congrats, Jordan. Yeah, congrats. Let us know if we can help. My man, Shane, thank you so much. Shane was a part of our Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Again, we've had over 1,000 students go through that program. And if you guys are serious about investing in yourself and learning how to sell and learning how to navigate the process of getting clients, get on the wait list. Okay. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/wait list. Okay. That's for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. That is the coaching program. That is not my Freight Broker Startup program. If you're brand new to the industry and you're just looking for some help on how to get started as a freight broker or how to get started as a freight agent, you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. That is my self-paced online course that will teach you how to become a freight broker, freight agent in 30 days or less. Okay. We've had over 10,000 students go through that program. That's the startup program. Okay. So if you're looking for startup help, you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. If you're looking specifically for sales help, you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. Thank you, Shane, for the kind words. Jordan asked, my plan to start off is to get in touch with shippers and receivers whose loads I'm already covering as a driver and get my foot in the door with them by letting them know. Okay. All right. Yeah, sure, Jordan. As long as you're not violating any sort of a no-back solicit or a non-compete of any sort, you're probably safe. That's probably a good idea. Yeah, Betty, I don't know, but it sounds to me like if you didn't factor any loads, that's the reason why. They probably have some sort of minimum for you, for each client, in order to do some sort of minimum volume for them to recoup what their upfront cost is for getting you set up, running credit, UCC filings, all of that. So it's not uncommon that companies like that don't charge you up front to come on board will have some sort of a minimum fee if you particularly if you jump out of the contract early. Okay. If you terminate the agreement early, it's not uncommon. Okay. Think about it from their perspective. They put a lot of resources into helping you get set up, educating you, getting through that process. And now, they're really invested in you and they didn't charge you up front for it. So if you put yourself in your shoes, you probably understand, right? If you put yourself in their shoes, I should say. Danny, and those terms will be agreed upon as a part of the agreement that you sign up front. So that's why you want to always make sure you read those agreements up front, okay? And the terms of those, okay? And ask those questions. Danny, what's your thoughts about, Danny asks, what's your thoughts about Rose Rocket? That's what we're using now, and I'm still struggling a little bit with it. I've heard good things about Rose Rocket, but I'm going to be honest with you, I've never personally used it. It's not the TMS that I focus in on. It's not the TMS that I refer to my clients, predominantly because there are so many TMSs out there that it's hard to keep track of them all, right? There's startups all the time. And, I work with my friend, Tim Hyam, who is the CEO of Ascend TMS. And so we have a great relationship. I know his software. I've referred hundreds of clients to him over the years, and they've all been happy. I've never had a client come back to me and say they hated the Ascend TMS. So if you want a TMS that is forward thinking, that has a lot of great innovation, is focused on the future of TMS, but is also very affordable and has a history of serving, I think they're the largest TMS provider out there. If I'm not mistaken, I think they have like 60,000 clients, okay, between brokers and carriers. And so, I highly recommend Tim and the team at Ascend. So you can get, if you go to freightburgerbootcamp.com/CRM, there's, he'll know you're from my community, and he's going to give you a special deal. You don't even need to have a credit card when you sign up. Okay. So you get a free trial with no credit card. And all you have to do is put in the coupon code FBBC. Okay. That's Freight Burger Bootcamp, FBBC. If you let him know that, he'll give you a special deal. And I think they even have like a shipper database that they'll give you for free just for coming on and trying Ascend. So, but you got to put the FBBC in the coupon code. So I hope that helps. All right. We're running close here. Another question or two, and then we're going to probably wrap it up for today. Matter of fact, hey, now it's your turn. I'm going to ask a favor. Can you guys do me a favor? Okay, here's the favor. It's really, really simple, okay? What I want you to do, if you found value in today's Freight Burger Bootcamp Live Q&A, I just put a link into for YouTube and Facebook. I don't think I put it into I don't think it was able to go directly into let me put it in here too. I'm going to put it into the LinkedIn. Give me 1 second. Okay, there you go. I just put it into LinkedIn as well. So do me a huge favor. If you found value, if you asked a question and I answered it, or you got good information from one of the questions somebody else asked, do me a huge favor. Write a quick review. Write a short review, right? A short review for me, a short Google review. It costs you nothing. It'll take you 60 seconds. Okay. If you write a short review, I truly appreciate it. That's the price of admission. I didn't ask you for your email address. I didn't ask you for a credit card. I came in here. We spent about 45 minutes on live Q&A. Okay. And if you want me to come back next week and the week after and every other week, okay, and help you answer all these questions and teach you how to start and grow a successful freight brokerage or freight agency, hit me up with a quick review. I truly appreciate it. I'm going to give some shout outs next week to the people that did give some reviews. I really appreciate it. Again, whether you're already a part of my Freight Burger Bootcamp startup course, whether you're a part of my Freight Burger Sales Accelerator, or whether you just love joining these lives because of the value that you get, write a quick review. Totally appreciate it. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks all. Make sure you click that link and write a short review. Got it? Click it now. I'll see you guys next week.